Oh man, we are stuck in the dog days of summer. Absolutely nothing to talk about. So we're going to talk about some overrated and underrated flyers. Caleb Weiler and Brian Wright are both here. They have each compiled a list of 3 players that they're about to give. I am not going to say any names because, well, I don't follow the team exclusively enough to do so. So with that being said, let's bring the guys onto the show. How's it going, guys? It's been a while.
Definitely been a while. Like you said, dog days of summer. Without any hockey on, baseball has just bored me to sleep every day. So it's good to be able to catch up with some Flyers news.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been a bit of a long summer here as we wait for NHL hockey to come back. But I've been at least interested in watching see how the Phillies progress, and can't forget about the Alejandro Bedoya signing for the Union, keeping the exciting summer alive in Philly sports. But let's talk some Flyers.
Love the Union plug. Love it. Love it. Whenever you get a chance to do it, you do it. All right. So let's start with Caleb. He's got an interesting name for his first guy, and I already know what's going to happen. You guys are going to click the dislike button. I know it. But Caleb, we'll start with you. Who is your first guy on the overrated list?
All right, I want to put, ahead of time say that I personally love this player, but nationally he's getting a little bit too much hype. I'm going to start with Shane Gostisbehere.
Oh, boo!
Oh, I know, boo, boo. But he's only in his second year as a professional, and the NHL Network had him ranked as the 18th overall best defenseman in the league, and ESPN had him ranked as the 6th overall top fantasy defenseman. Yeah, I know he's going to put up points. Yeah, I know he had a great stellar campaign, came in second in Calder Cup trophy voting. But seriously, a lot of players go down in a slump in their sophomore seasons. And as much as I want Shane Gostisbehere to continue progressing and to continue to be a great player, I just don't see him being ranked in the top 20 after 1 year. I love him. I think he's a great fit for the Flyers. I think he's going to be really good for us in the future, but maybe just a little bit overrated right now.
Interesting. Brian, do you have a reaction to that?
I'm a bit surprised that Gostisbehere makes the list there, but I could kind of understand it. You do see a lot of guys that have sophomore slumps, but you can't deny the unbelievable impact he made on the team when he was called up in November last year. He may be set for a bit of a down season, but I still think he's an important part of the future.
All right. Now let's go to your list, Brian. Who's your number one guy?
So my number one overrated guy right now is Jake Voracek, because he was a big part of the team a couple of years ago when they were making the late run to the playoffs. Last year he got hurt and was given, in the previous year, was given a big contract, 8 years, a lot of millions, and he just was unable to produce. After he came back from his injury, he played okay, but he really wasn't putting up the production that was necessary, despite the fact that they made the playoffs. He really didn't have too much of a hand in them getting to the postseason. So I think he's trending downward.
Okay. Caleb, didn't he make your list as well?
Yeah, Jake Voracek was my number 2, and I hate to admit it because I do like the guy. He was great for us a couple seasons ago. He played at over a point-per-game pace, but they gave him that big contract extension, and he was kind of a letdown last year. And as much as I don't want him to be overrated by the Flyers fan base, he definitely is. It's a little frustrating because you expect a little bit more out of him, but when you put 2 playmakers like Giroux and Voracek together on a line, and nobody's really scoring goals, one of them is bound to put up less points, and Giroux and Voracek definitely had career lows last year, so it was tough to see that. I expect a bounce back here, but he's definitely on that overrated side of the scale right now.
All right, let's go back to Brian. Flip it back to you, my friend. Who's your number 2 guy?
So my number 2 overrated Flyer right now is Mark Streit, who is nearing the end of his career, but he really, and he actually, an interesting tie-in from Caleb's use of Gostisbehere. I believe Gostisbehere was called up to replace Mark Streit, who had an injury that cost him a couple of months' worth of the season. But at age 38, Mark Streit really isn't bringing a lot to the team right now, and I know you don't really look at defensive point scoring as a benchmark for how good that a defenseman can be, but he right now, I think if they could find a way to sort of transit to move him so you could bring in a Ivan Provorov. That would be in their best interest. Last year, he played 62 games for the team and finished with 23 points, which is not terrible, but you'd like to see your alternate captain defenseman probably put up a little more production than that.
Do you have a
Yeah.
rebuttal? Anything, Gil?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Mark Streit is definitely on the overrated side of things right now. It's sad to see because he was a great player for us for a couple of years. Like you mentioned, he's an assistant captain, alternate captain. Great guy to have on the team. I'm sure he's a great guy in the locker room, especially with a lot of younger defensemen coming up through the system right now. But he's just not playing well. And on a national level, he definitely gets a little bit more recognition than he should. I think he's definitely going to get relegated to the second power play unit, if not off either of the power play units with the emergence of Provorov and probably Del Zotto coming back from injury this year.
Okay. Now, you bring up the national and local perspective. You know, we kind of talked about this in our Facebook chat. There is a difference between, being overrated nationally and being overrated locally, and, we just wanted to clarify that. Just to give, like, an Eagles example, Fletcher Cox is underrated by the national media, and because people outside of Philadelphia have no idea how good this guy is. But then when you look at, say, overrated guys in the Eagles, I would put Vinny Curry on that list because everyone's hyping him up right now. The guy struggles in run defense, so I don't think he's like a top 10 or top 20 defensive end currently. So that's kind of the difference there. So did you say your number 2 guy? I don't remember.
Yeah, my number 2 guy was Voracek, but I can move on to number 3.
Okay.
Which would be Matt Reed. He was a great player for us coming out of college, but he came into the league at a pretty later age. He was a little older. I think he was 24 at the time. He's almost 30 now, if not 30. I think he's definitely on the decline. He hasn't been putting up as many points. They don't use him to kill penalties as much anymore. He's just making more money than he's worth, in my opinion. I like Matt Reed. I think he's a great guy. I met him once at a signing. Really nice, but that doesn't really make up for not being as great as hockey.
Great guy.
As much as I love Matt Reed and I want him to succeed, I just don't think he's worth the paper right now. So as much as I love him, he's not really as useful on the penalty kill anymore, and he doesn't have the offensive production to supplement that.
Ryan, you got a reaction, and then give your third guy.
A lot of agreement tonight, but I agree with Matt Reed. I think he can be better. I'm kind of torn on Matt Reed because I think, in one sense, he might not have reached his potential, but on the other hand, I think he might have because he's kind of older. Every time the Flyers have had a national game where Matt Reed has done something, the only thing that they ever can say about him is that he played at Bemidji State. He's a good player, but I feel like his production should be higher than it is, and I'm not sure he's a part of the future that the Flyers want to hang on to that badly. So if they maybe could find a way to move him in the preseason or sometime during the year, that would also benefit them.
Okay. Who's your third guy, Brian?
My third overrated guy is Scott Lawton, who is a relatively young guy. He's been almost like a jewel of the farm system for quite a while. He finally broke into the big team. He played 71 games last year, but only managed 21 points. So I think if he's got to be better this year if they're gonna try to build on their playoff season from last year. But he's young. He's got some years to grow. But I think right now he's a little bit riding on hype.
Okay. All right. Now you've got an honorable mention as well. Now you originally had him on your list, but you decided to take him off. So he's an honorable mention.
I was a little brazen, I would say, but an honorable mention on the overrated side has to go to Claude Giroux. I love Claude Giroux. He's the captain of the team. He's the leader. And he's been great in the regular season. But recently, in the playoffs, he's been rather poor. The last 2 seasons the Flyers have made the playoffs, Giroux has managed a grand total of 7 points. Now, granted, Flyers haven't lasted that long in the playoffs, so he hasn't had a ton of time to pick it up. But so I don't want to. I'm giving him the honorable mention because he's a very good player and he's a guy you have to keep. But he needs to step it up late in the season and in the playoffs if they want to get deeper.
I'll say this: Sean Brace was on Breakfast on Broad, right? Said that Claude Drew was overrated. Sarah Baker laid into him.
I could see that happening. I
You,
didn't watch the
you,
show, but I.
you do not talk shit on Mr. Ronald McDonald. You don't do it.
Well, let me pose a question. If Ron Hextall is presented with a package of young, promising talent, do you consider
No,
trading Drew?
No.
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 I don't know anything, but I'll let Caleb answer that.
We'll pose it to the group. If Ron Hextall feels he's blown away by a trade offer for Giroux, do you have to consider it? Seriously consider it.
So here's the thing with that. Yeah, you can get a lot of young talent in the system. Maybe young guys, say, for example, Jonathan Druin, plus whatever, a couple picks. But you lose that leadership that you get with Claude Giroux. That guy's been on the Flyers forever. He was drafted with them. He's moved his way up through the ranks. And while recently he hasn't been playing well, last year in the 6 games against the Capitals, he only had 1 assist or 1 goal, 1 point, whatever, something like that. But as soon as the season ended, he had abdomen surgery. So he's obviously playing hurt. Everybody else wasn't playing that well at the time, and Braden Holtby's just a beast. So I don't think you can really put that on Claude Giroux when he's playing hurt, and everybody else on the team is playing hurt as well. I just don't think you can replace the leadership qualities that Claude Giroux brings to the team. Yeah, recently he hasn't been playing well, but he has 62 points in 63 playoff games, and he's always a top scorer for the Flyers. So I would say I respectfully disagree with you, but I think you're just wrong.
I agree with you about the leadership part. If they were to trade him, that would leave a sizable void that they really wouldn't be able to fill. But I also think Hextall wouldn't be a good general manager if he at least didn't look at something that was presented to him, if it was a feasible trade and it was fair for both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I think he could look at it and then tear it up.
Yeah, probably, but at least he would have to consider it if it was a decent offer. Shortly, but he'd have to consider it.
Well, you always consider trades, you right? You know, like, I mean, hey, you never know. You never know because the Eagles today, they got Dorial Green Beckham for Dennis Kelly, who I'd trade for a jar of peanut butter.
Can I just Dorial Green Beckham for Dennis Kelly is like getting can't even come up with an analogy. Like trading a really high priced steak for a bag of footballs.
Yeah. I made this analogy during the show. It's like upgrading from Rosie O'Donnell to Megan Fox.
Sounds like a nice upgrade.
My analogy.
Yeah, Megan Fox is fucking the things I do to her. All right, let's keep this PG. All right, let's move on to the underrated guys, players on the Flyers. So let's start with the number one guys for both of your guys' lists. Caleb, let's start with you.
All right, I'm going to start with Michael Del Zotto. It pains me to say that because I love him, but he's only on a 1-year deal for the rest of the season, and he's probably going to be gone after this year. As much as I love him, I don't think they're going to be able to afford him, but Michael Del Zotto is definitely underrated. He came in onto the team, regular pickup. I think he was making less than $1 million a year when they picked him up. And he played all right, but enough to warrant an extension for a couple of years. And I think he's just killer, man. I love Michael Del Zotto. He was there for offensive game, but he's really picked up his defensive play recently. And I just love what he brings to the blue line. I think he's going to be a great first or second pairing defender this year. I wish the Flyers could keep him. And I would like to see that happen in a way if they can deal Streit and maybe get rid of Schultz and a couple other things that they might be able to keep him on, because I think he adds that extra bit of efficiency on the back end, not just from an offensive standpoint, but also as a two-way defender as well.
Okay, Ryan, any thoughts on that?
No, I would agree. I like Del Zotto a lot. I would really want them to try to extend him if they can, but I know they're up against the cap. And if he plays well enough this year, he's probably going to price himself out of the Flyers' range. So you might not see him too much longer after this season. But he's underrated as a defensive defenseman. He's very good with the puck. He scores some timely goals. I think he's going to do really well this year.
Okay. Now, who's your number one guy on underrated list?
My number one underrated guy is none other than Radko Gudas, who the Flyers do not think is underrated anymore after they gave him that nice contract extension. But when they acquired him from Tampa as a throw-in, I believe, for Braden Coburn and a draft pick, and he had an ACL injury at the time. But I think everybody kind of was a little bit I think we liked Radko Gudas, but we really didn't see what he had until last year. I think he's a very important piece to the defense. He's nasty, which is what Flyer fans always want. He can score the occasional goal, and he stands up for his teammates, and he's very good at blocking shots. I think he's quality.
Okay. I think he's on your list as well, Caleb, correct?
Yeah, same thing as last round. Gudas comes in at number 2 for me, just slightly underneath Del Zotto, because the nice thing about Radko Gudas, besides from his beard, is the fact that he brings physicality to that blue line. Gostisbehere, soon to be Provorov, Streit, Del Zotto don't really bring a lot of nastiness to that blue line, and I think that's something that Radko Gudas really brings to the Flyers that nobody else besides Wayne Simmons really has. So it's good to have that on the back end, and like Brian said, he's good at blocking shots. He's going to kill some penalties for you, and when he needs to be, he's going to get in the dirty areas, not to be cliche, but he's going to get in there, and he's going to win you some battles, and he's going to be really good for the team overall if anybody decides to mess with one of our star players.
Get in the dirty areas. That's what she said. Yeah, you said joking there. I made this joke as well before, the Gudas Greek yogurt, and I must say I had one of those Chobani flips today. I had peanut butter dream. Oh my god. Oh, almost better than sex. I wouldn't go that far, but it had me tingling inside.
You should tell us how you really feel about it.
I made love to it. It was
okay, there you go.
Good. Oh my god, it melted in my mouth. Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's move on to Brian now. Who's number 2 on your list?
So my number 2 underrated guy is Sean Couturier, who I think we underrate him a bit because he doesn't put up the offensive numbers that he did when he was in junior. But he is a lockdown defensive center. And Philadelphia Flyer fans across the area delight in seeing him just shut down Evgeny Malkin. So I think he's got to pick up his offense a little bit, but the defensive side of his game is outstanding, and I think he deserves to be a little more well-known within the national spotlight because he's a very, very good player. He just hasn't been able to replicate his offensive numbers from junior, which is a tall task.
Now, I believe he's on Caleb's list as well, and I mean, not that I really know what I'm talking about, but it seemed like he got a lot of hype, early on in his career, and that's kind of faltered off a little bit. It's interesting.
Yeah, he was, I believe he was acquired in the Jeff Carter trade, which was a number 8 overall pick, so that's pretty high expectations right there, and he scored a ton of points in junior. So he was touted as almost the ultimate two-way center, and his offensive game in the NHL has never really developed. But he's still a young player, so there's time.
All right, let's move on to Caleb. You did have him, correct? If I remember correctly, you had him on the list?
Yeah, actually, Couturier did not make my list, but I will talk about him a little bit because I actually kind of had him stuck somewhere in the middle of overrated and underrated because, like you said, his defensive game is really good, and I love Sean Couturier, obviously, as a homer. You got to love everybody on your team. But he did come 8th in Selke voting, and when you got guys like Patrice Bergeron and Anze Kopitar and Jonathan Taves, who are always going to be in the top 3 of that Selke voting, it's kind of hard to overrate a person like Sean Couturier, who came in the top 10. He's only 23 years old. That's pretty impressive. But like you say, he doesn't score a lot of points. At some point, you have to wonder when it's okay to be disappointed with the fact that he's not putting up more than 0.5 points per game in a season. Because if he's going to be our number 2 center moving forward, he's definitely going to need to put up those points. I love him as a shutdown center, but Hextall just gave him this awesome contract extension, and he's going to need to prove his worth, and he's going to need to score some points.
Ryan, got any thoughts on that?
No, I think that encapsulates Sean Couturier perfectly.
Encapsulate, that's a fucking good word.
That's what I'm here for.
Love it. All right, Caleb, so then who's your number 3 guy then?
All right, so my number 3 guy is Michael Raffl. And the reason I think... Yeah, I love him, the waffle. So... The reason I think he's underrated is because of his versatility. Michael Raffl can move up and down the lineup. He can play in a shutdown role, PK role on your third line, or he can move up and play with Giroux and Voracek on the top line, scored 20 goals a year. I think he had a little bit of a down year last year. He scored a little bit more than 10 goals, didn't have too many assists. But I really like Raffl's game. I think he's physical, and I think when you put him with Giroux and Voracek and give him some good people to work with, he's going to score a lot of goals for you. So I really like Michael Raffle. I don't think a lot of people know about him outside of the Philadelphia area or even inside the Philadelphia area because not too many people care about hockey. But Michael Raffle is definitely a good pick for me. He's a good player, and I think the fact that he can slide in anywhere in the lineup makes him a very useful player moving forward.
I like it. I like it. Brian, any thoughts on that?
No, again, lots of agreement, but Raffle has shown that he's a very versatile player, and when you put him with Giroux and Voracek or Giroux and Simmons on those wings, he's speedy, he can score, so I think he's going to have himself a nice year coming up this year and possibly shed that underrated tag.
Yeah, and to close it out, one more guy for Brian Wright. Who is it?
So my last underrated guy is defenseman Nick Schultz, who I think we as Flyer fans somewhat take for granted. He's an older player. He's made, I believe, over 1,000 appearances in the NHL. But when he's not there, you notice. He's very good at checking. He's very good at marking, and he blocks shots really well. And he's the type of guy that us Flyer fans love because he's physical, as most big defensemen are. But you need the guys that will get in the dirty zones like Gudis.
He said.
But yeah, I like Schultz a lot, and you definitely notice if he's got an injury and he's missed games, you notice that he's not there.
Yeah.
Like that name, Caleb?
Yeah, I guess you could put me into that group of Flyers fans who don't really appreciate Nick Schultz. I don't really consider him underrated. I think at this point in his career, he is what he is. And I don't think the fact that when he's out that you notice him, it's more along the lines of we don't have any depth to cover for him because Brandon Manning sucks. But with Provorov up this year, more than likely, I don't think if Nick Schultz is out, he's going to be missed. He is what he is at this point in his career. I think he's like 33 or 34 years old. He has a lot of games under his belt. And it's a nice veteran presence to have, but I feel like the Flyers would be better off without him.
Okay.
Well, if the young guys pan out the way we want them to, then you could easily afford to lose Nick Schultz. So in the mindset of progressing the franchise forward, let's hope they don't need Nick Schultz.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. That about wraps it up, unless you guys have any more honorable mentions you can think of.
Not for me. I feel like everybody else is really appreciated for the role that they play on the Flyers. You couldn't really call somebody like Wayne Simmons overrated because you know what he is. He's going to be a 30-goal guy, 60-point player, and basically everybody else in the Flyers knows their role. So I think we're pretty happy with the roster that we have moving forward this year.
I would agree. Yeah, I was on the fence about Wayne Simmons being overrated, but that's poppycock because you know exactly what he is. He's a 30-goal scorer, and he's a menace on the power plays.
All right. Any final thoughts before we head out?
Final thoughts. It's football season. You know what that means. 1 month closer to hockey. And we get hockey earlier this year because we have the World Cup of Hockey going on. So check it out. Root for Team North America to kick everybody else's butt. Let's hope Shane Gostisbehere kills it. And let's go Flyers.
Wait, it's Team North America, not like they don't split up the countries?
All right, so I'm going to plug the World Cup of Hockey real quick right here. So the way it works is there's a USA team and a Canada team, but there's a under 23 team, like 23 and under, that's Canada and North America, or Canada and the USA. So they're considered the North American team. So they have players like Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel, Shane Gostisbehere, a couple other really good players. So I'm really excited to see what they're going to bring to the table, and I already ordered my Team North America Shane Gostisbehere jersey. So you'll see that hanging up next show.
That's
nice. On the overrated list, too, by the way.
Obviously.
Ryan, final thoughts?
Final thought. You know who's not overrated?
Who's that?
Alejandro Bedoya. Union, Toronto FC. Saturday night, Talon Energy Stadium. Alejandro Bedoya makes his home debut. Go to the game.
Yeah, we'll be doing a recap for that for the Bitterbirds, and I can't wait for it. I've been
that place is going to be packed.
Yeah, prior to the move, I could care less about the fucking MLS.
But now you care, and that's the goal.
Care. So that's exactly why they made this move. It was genius.
Capacity on that stadium is 18,500. I think you're going to see 20,000 standing room.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. Maybe we'll do a show Sunday afternoon. It should be free, I believe.
I'm game. Let's do it.
All right, we'll do that. All right, I really don't have any final thoughts. I kind of already gave my final thoughts in the Eagles show, so I don't really need to say anything more. For Caleb Weiler, Brian Wright, I am Adrian. Thank you. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. And let us know in the comments section below, who are your 3 most overrated players? Who are your 3 most underrated players? And do you guys think Claude Giroux is overrated? Do you guys think Shane Gostisbehere is overrated? Let us know. We're out. Later.
Hey.